In the dim light of her attic, Clara discovered an old, dust-laden camera, its leather strap cracked with age. Intrigued, she decided to test it out, keen on capturing memories of her quiet home. After a few trial shots, she turned to her reflection in the attic mirror. As she pressed the shutter, a strange sensation prickled her skin. The flash illuminated the corner of the attic, where shadows twisted unsettlingly. Brushing it off as her imagination, she continued snapping pictures, each click echoing in the stillness. Later that evening, Clara developed the photos, her anticipation mounting. But when the images emerged, her heart dropped. In every shot, lurking behind her were figures, pale, twisted shapes that seemed to leer at her. Panic set in as she realized that in the last photograph, one figure was closer, its eyes glinting with malice. That night, she heard a whisper, a raspy voice calling her name, growing louder until it filled her head. The next day, Clara vanished without a trace. The camera remained, the last photograph still hanging in the air, waiting for another unsuspecting soul to discover its sinister secret. While cleaning out the cluttered basement of her family's century-old manor, Clara discovered an antique locket resting inside a cracked jewelry box. Tarnished yet alluring, the locket seemed to call to her. Curious, Clara opened it, revealing the sepia-toned portrait of a young girl with sorrowful eyes. What she didn't know was that the locket once belonged to Isabella, a child who vanished under mysterious circumstances long ago, leaving whispers of betrayal and rage. Clara began wearing the locket, unaware of the curse it carried. Soon, her nights were plagued by vivid dreams of drowning, and the faint sound of sobbing echoed through the halls. Objects moved on their own, and mirrors reflected more than just Clara's image. One evening, she woke to find water pooling around her bed, and Isabella's voice pleading, "Save me." Panicked, Clara sought answers, uncovering a tragic story of jealousy and murder. Isabella's spirit, bound to the locket, sought not just justice but company in her eternal misery. When Clara tried to return the locket to its resting place, she found it tightly clasped around her neck, the clasp broken and immovable. That night, she found a single message etched into her bathroom mirror. "You're mine now." In the heart of a forgotten cemetery, a young boy named Eli stumbled upon a grave overgrown with brambles. The name was barely legible, etched into crumbling stone: Abigail. Intrigued, he knelt down, brushing away dirt, when a soft whisper filled the air. "Help me," it pleaded, sending shivers down his spine. Eli glanced around, but the cemetery was empty, save for the rustling leaves. Compelled, he pressed his ear against the stone. "They won't let me go," the voice lamented, sending his heart racing. Each day after school, Eli returned to the grave, drawn by the whispers that grew more frantic. "Dig. Find me," it urged, as if urging him to uncover long-buried secrets. His friends warned him to stay away, but the allure of the voice consumed his thoughts. One fateful evening, driven by a mixture of dread and curiosity, Eli brought a small shovel. As he dug, the soil felt unnaturally cold. Suddenly, the ground shifted, and Eli's hands brushed against something slick. Panic surged. He unearthed a small, hollow casket. When he opened it, he screamed as a shriveled hand grasped his wrist, pulling him into darkness. The whispers ceased, and the cemetery fell silent, waiting for the next curious soul. In a dusty attic, Sarah found an old porcelain doll, its painted eyes glinting mischievously in the dim light. Intrigued, she took it home, thinking it would make a perfect gift for her younger sister, Lily. That night, as the house settled into silence, Sarah heard a soft voice drifting from the doll. "Help me," it whispered, sending chills down her spine. Dismissing it as her imagination, she fell into a restless sleep, the doll perched ominously on her bedside table. The next day, Sarah noticed oddities. Lily spoke of a new friend who told her secrets about their family, things no one but Sarah had known. As dazed, the whispers grew clearer, revealing truths that spiraled into darkness. The doll shared the tale of a girl named Eliza, who had gone missing decades ago, a girl who had once owned a similar doll. One stormy night, Sarah awoke to find the doll gone. Panic surged as she rushed to Lily's room, only to discover her sister was missing too. In her place was the doll, now with eyes that seemed to glimmer with malicious glee. The last whisper echoed in Sarah's mind, "You'll find her where I once was lost." The attic door creaked open, inviting her into the darkness. Every night, the light in the old hallway flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that twisted across the walls. Clara had grown accustomed to it, dismissing it as a mere electrical fault. But tonight felt different. The air was thicker, charged with an unsettling energy. As she passed the doorway, the light dimmed, and a shape seemed to flicker just at the edge of her vision. She halted, heart racing, peering into the darkness. Nothing moved, yet she felt a presence behind her. She spun around, but the hallway was empty. Shaking off the feeling, Clara returned to her room. The flickering resumed, more insistent now. Each pulse of light revealed the outline of something, tall, slender, and impossibly still. She grabbed her phone, the screen illuminating the room, and cautiously stepped back into the hallway. The light was brighter now, almost blinding, and as it flickered, the shape morphed, growing closer with each pulse. In an instant, the light went out, plunging her into darkness. Clara was frozen, terror gripping her as she felt cold breath on her neck. The moment the light flickered back on, she gasped, realizing she was not alone. There in the glow stood a version of herself, eyes wide with horror, trapped in a silent scream. The old house creaked with age, but it was the whispers that unsettled Mia most. Each night, as she settled into her bed, the soft murmurs drifted down from the attic. At first, she dismissed them as the wind or her imagination, but they grew more distinct, forming a haunting chorus of unintelligible words. Curiosity gnawed at her until, one fateful night, she resolved to investigate. Grabbing a flashlight, she climbed the rickety stairs, the air growing cold and thick with unease. The whispers swirled around her, now sounding like pleas. "Help us," they seemed to beg. Heart-pounding, Mia pushed open the attic door. Dust particles danced in the narrow beam of her light, revealing a cramped space filled with forgotten relics and darkness. As she stepped inside, the whispers intensified, surrounding her like a clamoring crowd. Suddenly, her flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into suffocating blackness. Panic surged. She stumbled back towards the door, but it slammed shut, trapping her inside. The whispers transformed into laughter, low, mocking, and hungry. They were no longer pleas, they were promises. As the last light of her sanity dimmed, Mia realized she was not alone. She never would be again. Emily always loved the old mirror in her grandmother's attic, its ornate frame a relic of the past. One stormy night, seeking solace from the thunder, she climbed up to gaze into it. As lightning illuminated the attic, she noticed something strange. Her reflection smiled back at her, even though her own lips were pressed into a thin line of confusion. Heart racing, she blinked, certain it was a trick of the light. But the reflection remained, grinning wider, eyes glinting with malice. Panic surged through her as she stepped back, but the reflection didn't move. Instead, it raised a hand, beckoning her closer. Against her better judgment, Emily leaned in, drawn by an inexplicable force. Suddenly, the glass rippled like water, and without warning, her reflection lunged forward, yanking her into the mirror's depths. Trapped in the cold, dark void, she screamed, but it echoed only within her mind. Outside, the mirror reflected the attic, still and quiet. In the glass, Emily's reflection now wore her face, wearing a satisfied smile. It whispered softly, "Your turn to be me." And in the stillness of the attic, the last flicker of lightning faded, leaving only the reflection watching, waiting. In the forgotten library of her great-uncle's mansion, Emma unearthed an aged, leather-bound journal. Its cover was scarred with claw-like marks, and its pages smelled faintly of soot. The journal seemed blank at first, but as Emma turned the pages, words began to appear in a childlike scrawl, describing the life of a boy named Samuel who vanished under strange circumstances during a fire. Intrigued, Emma kept the journal close, unaware of its ominous power. Each night, more entries surfaced, recounting Samuel's growing fear of the shadow, a sinister figure that tormented him. Emma began hearing faint whispers while reading, and flickering shadows danced across her room's walls, even in complete darkness. One night, she woke to find the journal open on her desk, the words "I see you" freshly inked. Frightened, Emma researched the mansion's history and discovered that Samuel had tried to warn his family of the shadow before he disappeared. Now, the journal served as a beacon, drawing the shadow to its reader. When Emma attempted to destroy the book, she found it untouched on her nightstand the next morning, its final message chilling her to the core. "You're next." The shadow lingered after that, growing closer each night, until Emma's reflection vanished from every mirror. All that remained was a pair of glowing eyes in the darkness. In a village shrouded by dense woods, whispers of an ancient curse loomed like shadows. Each year, to appease the unseen force that haunted their lands, one villager would vanish, never to be seen again. This year, it was Clara's turn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the villagers gathered at the old stone altar, their faces pale and eyes full of dread. Clara, trembling but resolute, stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She had volunteered, believing the sacrifice would save her loved ones. As the villagers chanted in hushed tones, Clara felt the cold grip of despair clutching her throat. Suddenly, an eerie howl pierced the night, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. The atmosphere thickened, and she sensed the presence of something sinister. In a panic, she turned to flee. But the villagers, their faces eerily calm, blocked her path. With horror dawning, Clara realized the truth. They weren't here to save her. They were the sacrifice. In an instant, the altar cracked open, revealing a gaping maw of darkness. As she was pulled into the abyss, Clara's screams echoed through the woods, merging with the whispers of the villagers, who smiled knowingly, their offering complete. In a remote corner of Alaska, hikers often report a strange metal tower rising from the forest. It isn't marked on maps, and no one knows who built it. Locals call it the Signal Tower and warn travelers to stay away. A group of friends on a camping trip decided to investigate after hearing the stories. They found the tower at sunset, its rusted frame stretching high into the sky, topped with a blinking red light. Despite the eerie silence around it, no birds, no wind, they pressed on. At the base of the tower, they discovered strange carvings etched into the metal, spirals, geometric shapes, and symbols they couldn't decipher. One of them climbed the rickety ladder to the top, hoping to get a better view. Halfway up, he froze. "There's something up here," he whispered down. The others saw him stop moving, his head tilted as if listening. Then, without warning, he screamed and fell, landing lifeless at their feet. Panicked, the group tried to leave, but their phones and compasses stopped working. A deep, vibrating hum filled the air, and the blinking light atop the tower began flashing faster. One by one, they started hearing voices, faint at first, then louder. Each voice seemed to come from a loved one, calling for help. Against their will, they found themselves walking back toward the tower. By morning, the forest was empty, save for the tower, its light still blinking steadily. Locals say the tower broadcasts a signal no one can trace, and those who hear it never come back. But the real question remains, who or what is it calling? Liam had lived in his apartment for 3 months before noticing the door. It was small, almost hidden, tucked behind a tall bookshelf in the living room. He was sure it hadn't been there before. Curiosity gnawed at him. One night, he moved the bookshelf aside and tried the handle. It was locked. A faint sound came from the other side, like whispers just out of reach. The next day, a key appeared on his kitchen counter. He didn't own a key like that, but it fit the lock perfectly. When Liam opened the door, he found a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. Against his better judgment, he descended. The air grew colder with every step, the whispers louder. At the bottom was a small, windowless room. In the center stood a single wooden chair, and on the walls were dozens of Polaroid photos. Liam's stomach turned as he recognized himself in every photo, sleeping, eating, walking to work. Some of the pictures were from angles that weren't possible inside his apartment. Suddenly, the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. The whispers stopped. Liam ran up the stairs, but the door wouldn't budge. Behind him, the chair creaked. He turned to see a figure sitting in it, its face shrouded in shadow. "You shouldn't have come here," it said in his own voice. The next morning, Liam's landlord found the apartment empty. The only thing left behind was the Polaroid camera, still warm to the touch. In a quiet town, people began vanishing without a trace. The only clue was a mysterious late-night radio signal. Between 3 and 4 a.m., it hijacked frequencies, playing distorted music, faint whispers, and ending with a countdown. Jake, a skeptic, decided to investigate. At 3:13 a.m., his old radio picked up the signal. A haunting melody played, layered with whispers he couldn't quite make out. Then the countdown began. 60, 59, 58. As it ticked down, the whispers grew louder, forming a voice. "We see you." When the countdown hit 0, Jake's lights flickered, and his computer screen filled with static. A message appeared. "You're marked." The next day, black SUVs appeared outside his house. Strangers in dark suits lingered, watching him. When Jake tried to share the recording, the file corrupted. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop listening." That night, the signal returned, blasting from his speakers, even with the radio off. The countdown began again. Jake unplugged everything, but the whispers grew deafening, and the voice said, "It's time." The next morning, Jake was gone. His apartment was empty, as if he'd never lived there. Conspiracy theorists claim the signal is a recruitment tool, or a beacon for something not of this world. Late at night, the whispers still drift through the airwaves, carrying a chilling warning. "We see you." The Thompsons were thrilled to find an antique mirror at a local estate sale. It was tall, ornate, and perfect for their living room. But from the moment they hung it, strange things began to happen. At first, it was small, a flicker in the corner of their vision, a shadow that didn't belong. Then, their daughter, Lily, claimed she saw someone in the mirror. "She looks like me," Lily said, "but she's not." One night, as the family watched TV, the mirror's surface rippled. John Thompson dismissed it as a trick of the light, but his wife swore she saw their reflections move when they hadn't. Things escalated when Lily stopped responding to her name. She'd stand in front of the mirror for hours, her lips moving silently. When her mother tried to pull her away, Lily turned and whispered, "She says it's my turn now." The next morning, Lily was gone. Her reflection remained, staring back with a twisted smile. Desperate, the Thompsons smashed the mirror, but all that was left was a black void where the glass had been. Faint laughter echoed from the shards. The mirror was gone, but every window in the house now showed a reflection that didn't match. In the 1980s, a small town called Ashbourne vanished overnight. Maps were updated, records erased, and its name forgotten. Only a handful of conspiracy theorists claim it ever existed. Lila, a journalist, stumbled across a cryptic forum thread about Ashbourne. It mentioned strange experiments and government cover-ups. Intrigued, she followed the breadcrumbs, old newspaper clippings, abandoned roads leading to nowhere, and whispers of a Project Silent Dawn. Eventually, she found the supposed location. A cracked, overgrown road led to a clearing where the town should have been. Instead, she found crumbling foundations and a single intact sign, "Welcome to Ashbourne." As Lila explored, she noticed the air felt heavy and the silence was unnatural. Then she saw them, shadowy figures moving just beyond her vision. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Leave now." Ignoring the warning, she pressed on and found a rusted metal hatch. Inside were files stamped "classified." They detailed experiments with sound waves and mass psychological manipulation. A final note read, "Containment failed. Evacuate immediately." Before she could leave, the shadows surrounded her. Her phone camera captured one last image, the Ashbourne sign, now pristine, with lights glowing faintly in the distance. Lila never returned, and her notes were wiped from the internet. Those who search for Ashbourne claim to hear faint whispers calling them back, but no one who goes looking ever comes home. In 1998, a mysterious TV signal began interrupting late-night broadcasts in small towns across the Midwest. It showed a static-filled screen with a faint figure in the background and a distorted voice repeating, "Do you see me?" At first, it was dismissed as a prank, but the interruptions grew more frequent, always airing at exactly 2:13 a.m. People who watched the broadcast reported strange side effects, headaches, vivid nightmares, and a feeling of being watched. Some claimed the figure in the static was getting closer. One night, David, an insomniac, decided to record the broadcast. He watched as the static shifted, revealing a pale, hollow-eyed figure staring directly at him. The voice whispered, "I see you now." The next morning, David's neighbors found his TV on. The screen cracked. He was gone, with no signs of a struggle except for a single handprint burned into the carpet. After David's disappearance, the broadcast stopped. But conspiracy theorists claim it wasn't random. The towns where it aired have the highest rates of missing persons, and those who watched it still report seeing the figure in their dreams, whispering, "You're next." Some say the phantom broadcast was a failed government experiment in mind control. Others believe it was something far worse, reaching through the static to claim its victims.
What if all you know about the cursed videotape was a lie? The legend of the ring traces back to ancient folklore, where spirits were said to be trapped in images, seeking vengeance. The chilling tale follows a young girl named Samara, whose tragic death fueled her wrath. Some believe this horror was inspired by a real-life phenomenon where discarded tapes led to mysterious vanishings. Over time, variations of the story emerged, each deepening the fear surrounding the tape. Those who dared to watch it faced terrifying apparitions, culminating in their demise. The tape serves as a warning, a reminder that some films are more than entertainment. What if I told you about a night of music and celebration that turned into a chilling tale of tragedy and haunting? In 1996, Ozone Disco in Quezon City, Philippines, was the site of one of the deadliest nightclub fires in history. Over 160 lives were lost in the blaze, many trapped inside the building with no escape. Legend has it that the souls of those who perished never left. People claim to hear faint music, laughter, and screams coming from the abandoned site late at night. Taxi drivers report seeing ghostly figures hailing rides, only for them to vanish once the car stops. Locals believe the spirits linger, reliving their final moments or seeking justice for the neglect that led to the tragedy. Is it a place forever marked by grief? Or does the Ozone Disco still echo with the voices of the past? Subscribe for more true stories that blur the line between tragedy and the supernatural.
Sophia always joked about her terrible memory. I'd forget my own roommate if I wasn't careful, she'd laugh. But lately, things felt off. She'd come home to find the TV on or food missing from the fridge, even though she lived alone. One day, her coworker asked, "How's your roommate? She seemed nice when I saw her last week." Sophia froze. She didn't have a roommate. That night, she heard footsteps in the hall. Heart pounding, she grabbed a knife and crept toward the sound. The footsteps led to her bedroom. When she pushed open the door, someone was sitting on her bed, someone who looked exactly like her. The figure smiled, tilting its head. "You don't remember me," it said softly, "but I remember you." Sophia tried to back away, but the figure stood, mirroring her every move. "You forgot about me," it whispered, its voice dripping with venom. "But I've been here the whole time." Before Sophia could scream, the figure lunged. The next morning, Sophia's friends noticed she seemed different. Her smile was too wide, her laugh too sharp. And at night, when she looked in the mirror, her reflection mouthed silently, "Let me out."
It began as a rumor on forums, a phone number that shouldn't exist. If you called it, a distorted voice would answer, saying only, "Do you want to know the truth?" Most dismissed it as a hoax, but those who called often vanished within days. Mia found the number scrawled on a sticky note at work. Curious, she dialed it. The call connected instantly, though no ringtone played. A voice whispered, "Do you want to know the truth?" She hesitated, then said, "Yes." The voice chuckled, "You already know it." The line went dead, but her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications flooded in, photos of her, taken from angles she didn't recognize. One showed her at her desk that morning, another sitting on her couch. The last photo was taken at that moment. It showed her on the phone, with a shadowy figure standing behind her. She turned, but no one was there. The next day, Mia's co-workers noticed her desk was empty. Her apartment, too, was eerily spotless, save for her phone. It buzzed with one final message: "You're part of it now." Conspiracy forums exploded with theories, secret organizations, time loops, or a surveillance system gone rogue. But no one knows where the calls come from or where the callers go. All they know is the number keeps appearing, waiting for someone else to pick up.
It began with strange reports, people hearing static on their devices, even when they were turned off. Phones, TVs, radios, it didn't matter. The static came, always accompanied by faint voices that seemed to whisper names. Ben first noticed it on his phone. Late one night, as he scrolled in bed, the screen flickered. The static started, and through it, he heard his name. "Ben," the voice whispered, faint but unmistakable. He dismissed it as a glitch, but the next day, his coworkers mentioned hearing his name too, on their own devices. "It was like you were calling me," one said, unnerved. That night, Ben unplugged everything. But at 3 a.m., his TV turned on by itself. Static filled the screen, and the whispers returned, louder this time. "We're coming for you, Ben." Terrified, he tried to leave, but his front door wouldn't open. The lights flickered and the static grew deafening. Through the noise, a shadow formed on the TV screen, growing clearer until it resembled Ben himself. The shadow smiled and spoke, "You can't run." When Ben's friends came to check on him the next day, his apartment was empty. His phone sat on the table, playing endless static. Theories flooded the internet, a government experiment, a digital curse, or a message from another dimension. But one thing was certain. If you heard your name in the static, it was already too late. When the Garcias moved into their new home, they were delighted to discover an extra room not listed on the blueprints. It was small but cozy, tucked behind the laundry room with a single window that overlooked the backyard. Their teenage son, Ben, claimed it as his own space. He filled it with books, posters, and a beanbag chair, spending hours there after school. But soon he began acting strangely, distant, tired, and jumpy. One night, Ben burst into his parents' room, trembling. "The window doesn't look outside anymore," he whispered. Confused, they followed him to the room. Sure enough, the window no longer showed the backyard, but a black void, faintly pulsing as if alive. Over the next few days, the family tried to avoid the room, but its door would always be open, the darkness inside seeming to creep closer. Then they heard Ben talking to someone. When they confronted him, he said, "It's not a someone. It's the room. It says it's hungry." That night, Ben disappeared. They searched the house, calling his name, but all they found was his phone lying in the center of the extra room. By morning, the room was gone, its door replaced by a solid wall. The Garcias swore it had been there, but no one believed them. Years later, the house's new owners reported hearing faint knocks coming from behind the laundry room wall.
What if all you know about government secrecy was a lie? The eerie world of alien conspiracies depicted in a popular series raises unsettling questions. One chilling theory suggests the existence of a secret project called MK Ultra, where the government experimented on unwitting citizens, blurring lines between reality and fiction. This project, shrouded in darkness, aimed to explore mind control and often included bizarre tests reminiscent of extraterrestrial encounters. The eerie resemblance between these experiments and the show's plotlines implies that fiction may echo true horrors. Are we merely spectators, or are we being watched? Subscribe for more unnerving tales.
The Millers stumbled upon the old clock at a dusty antique shop. It was beautiful, hand-carved wood with intricate gears and a faint chime that felt oddly soothing. The shopkeeper warned them, "This clock keeps more than time," but they laughed it off and brought it home. At first, the clock was a charming centerpiece, but soon its ticking grew louder, echoing through the house even when they weren't near it. The hands moved erratically, sometimes stopping altogether, only to start spinning backward. One night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the chime rang out, louder than ever before. The family woke to find the house freezing cold, the air heavy. Shadows moved unnaturally, stretching and twisting along the walls. Their son Max was the first to notice the figure, a gaunt man in a tattered suit standing near the clock. His hollow eyes locked onto them as he whispered, "Time's up." The family tried to flee, but every door led back to the living room. The clock's hands spun faster and faster, the chime now deafening. One by one, the Millers vanished, their screams swallowed by the sound of grinding gears. By morning, the house was silent. The clock sat pristine, its hands reset to midnight, waiting patiently for its next owner.
What if all you know about The Simpsons was not just a show, but a chilling prophecy? This iconic series, known for its humor, has eerily predicted major events, from Donald Trump's presidency to the 9/11 attacks. Originating in the late 1980s, some episodes contain bizarre coincidences that have left fans unnerved. One infamous episode featured a monorail system in Springfield, only to have a real-life monorail proposal arise in 1997. Over the years, variations of this theory suggest that the show's creators possess a supernatural foresight. Real-life tragedies seem to echo in its plot lines, leading some viewers to wonder, is it all just a bizarre coincidence? Or is there something sinister at play? Subscribe for more chilling tales.
It started as a rumor on conspiracy forums. A strange radio frequency, dubbed the Black Signal, could be picked up at exactly 3:03 a.m. on shortwave radios. Those who tuned in claimed to hear a distorted voice delivering cryptic messages, coordinates, or chilling warnings like, "They are watching." Jake, a self-proclaimed conspiracy enthusiast, decided to investigate. He dusted off an old radio, set his alarm for 3 a.m., and tuned in. At first, there was only static. Faintly, a voice emerged, crackling and disjointed. "Do not look outside," it said. Jake froze, heart pounding. Against his better judgment, he glanced at the window. A dark figure stood motionless in the yard, its outline barely visible in the moonlight. The next night, curiosity overtook fear. He tuned in again. This time, the voice whispered coordinates, his exact location. "Leave now," it added. By the third night, the voice grew clearer. "They know you're listening," it hissed. The lights in Jake's house flickered and his phone vibrated. A text appeared. "Stop." Terrified, Jake unplugged the radio and smashed it, but the signal didn't stop. His TV flickered on, displaying static, and the voice returned, louder than ever. "You can't run." The next morning, Jake was gone. His house was empty, save for a single unmarked radio sitting on the table, still tuned to the black signal. The forums went silent after that, but some claim the signal still broadcasts, waiting for its next listener.
What if I told you there's a forest so haunted, locals won't set foot in it after dark? Deep in Romania lies the Hoia Baciu Forest, often called the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Known for its twisted trees and eerie silence, the forest is home to countless tales of disappearances, ghostly apparitions, and unexplainable phenomena. Legend has it that a shepherd once entered the forest with 200 sheep, and none of them were ever seen again. Another story speaks of a little girl who vanished, only to reappear years later, unchanged and with no memory of where she'd been. People report feeling watched, sudden nausea, and even strange lights floating between the trees. And then there's the forest's infamous clearing, a perfect circle where nothing grows, said to be a portal to another dimension. Paranormal investigators have recorded bizarre energy readings here, but no one can explain why it exists. Would you dare to enter this forest of nightmares? Subscribe for more spine-chilling tales from around the world.
It started with a strange notification. People would receive a message on their phone that simply said, "You've been scheduled." No sender, no details, just a date and time. Emma got hers at midnight. The notification appeared even though her phone was on airplane mode. "You've been scheduled, 3 a.m. tomorrow." She tried deleting it, but it wouldn't go away. By morning, rumors online revealed others had received the same message. Theories ranged from a viral prank to hackers, but one thing stood out: no one who reached their scheduled time was ever heard from again. Emma stayed awake that night, every light on, clutching her phone. At exactly 3 a.m., the lights flickered, and her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a live feed of her own living room. In the video, a figure stood behind her. Emma spun around, but the room was empty. The screen now displayed a countdown. Panicked, she tried to call for help, but her phone was locked to the timer. The figure reappeared on the screen, closer now, its face blurred but its intent clear. The countdown hit 0. The screen went black. The next day, Emma's apartment was silent. Her phone lay on the floor, the notification still glowing. "You've been scheduled." Conspiracy theorists claim the notifications are part of a sinister AI experiment or a ritualistic purge, but no one knows who or what is behind it. All they know is when the message comes, you can't escape your appointment. It started with sudden blackouts. Entire neighborhoods plunged into darkness, always at 3 a.m., lasting exactly 13 minutes. When the power returned, residents reported the same thing. Their TVs and radios turned on, broadcasting a faint signal. The broadcast was eerie, distorted voices, static, and a faint, rhythmic tapping. Those who listened too closely swore they heard their own names whispered. Maya, a night owl, decided to investigate. When the blackout hit her street, she lit a candle and turned on her radio. The static came first, then the voices, faint and overlapping. She froze when she heard her name, spoken in her own voice. Suddenly, the tapping grew louder, more deliberate, as if someone or something was inside her house. She grabbed her flashlight and followed the sound to her living room. Her TV had turned on, showing a live feed of her standing there, holding the flashlight. Then the screen flickered, and a shadow appeared behind her in the broadcast. Maya spun around, but the room was empty. The voice from the TV whispered, "You've been chosen." When the power returned, Maya was gone. Her house was left undisturbed, except for the TV, which played static on an endless loop. Conspiracy theorists claim the blackouts are tests for a larger event, a way to identify and take targets. But those who disappear never return, and the broadcasts continue, whispering new names into the night. Flight 717 was a routine red-eye from Chicago to Denver. It was a clear night, and passengers settled in for the short flight. But 45 minutes in, the plane abruptly disappeared from radar. No distress signal, no debris, just gone. The official report blamed a freak electrical malfunction, but conspiracy theorists had other ideas. Some claimed the plane was hijacked by shadowy government forces. Others believed it entered a time slip, or was abducted by something not of this world. Months later, strange reports surfaced. A farmer in Nebraska claimed to see a plane hovering silently in the sky before vanishing. Hikers in Colorado found a field littered with charred airline seats, but no sign of passengers. Then, nearly a year to the day after its disappearance, Flight 717 reappeared. Air traffic controllers in Denver were stunned when the plane landed on an empty runway, its lights flickering. But there was no one on board. The seats were intact, luggage still stowed, and the cockpit was empty. Investigators found only one clue. The plane's black box recorded hours of static, interrupted by a single chilling phrase whispered over and over, "They took us." The plane was quietly dismantled, and officials dismissed the incident as a hoax. But late at night, conspiracy forums buzz with theories. Some say Flight 717 never landed at all, that what returned wasn't the same plane. Others claim to hear faint whispers when passing near the Denver airport, as if the passengers are still calling for help. Clara always closed her curtains before bed, but lately she'd wake to find them slightly open. Her neighbors began mentioning seeing her standing at the window late at night, staring out. "You were just watching," her friend said one morning. "I waved, but you didn't move." Clara laughed nervously. "I was asleep." One night, she stayed awake, determined to catch whatever was happening. At 3 a.m., a faint tapping came from the window. Heart pounding, Clara turned to see a figure standing outside, her own face staring back at her. The shadow smiled and tapped again, its movements jerky and unnatural. "Let me in," it mouthed. Clara backed away, grabbing her phone, but when she looked again, the figure was inside, standing by the window. It moved toward her, its steps perfectly mirroring hers. "You've been living my life," it whispered. "Now it's my turn." Before Clara could scream, the shadow lunged. The next morning, Clara greeted her neighbors with a cheerful smile. But at night, behind the closed curtains, her reflection pressed its hands against the glass, its face twisted in silent, desperate terror.
What if all you know about the Conjuring House was a lie? Originating from real-life events in the 1970s, this infamous location is steeped in horror. The Perron family who moved in experienced unexplained phenomena, whispers, cold spots, and ghostly apparitions. Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned paranormal investigators, were called to help. They claimed the house was haunted by a witch named Bathsheba Sherman, who once lived there and cursed anyone who dared to take her land. The family's terrifying encounters inspired chilling tales, blurring reality and fiction. Are the Warrens' claims fabricated? Or is something sinister lurking within those walls? Subscribe for more eerie stories.
Jason always dismissed the weird looks people gave him. "You were just here," strangers would say, but Jason would laugh it off. How could he be in two places at once? Then his girlfriend, Emma, started acting distant. "You've been so cold lately," she said one night. Jason was confused. He hadn't seen her all day. Things got worse when he walked into his apartment and heard laughter coming from the living room. He froze. Emma was there, sitting on the couch, talking to someone. It was him. The other Jason turned to look at him, smiling in a way that sent chills down his spine. "You're not supposed to be here," it said, its voice too smooth, too perfect. Jason backed away, but Emma stared at him in confusion. "Jason, what's wrong?" she asked, looking between the two of them. The other Jason stood, its movements unnervingly fluid. "I'm the better version," it said. "You've had your chance." Before Jason could react, the double lunged. When the police arrived hours later, Emma insisted there was only one Jason. But every time he passed a mirror, his reflection stared back with wide, terrified eyes, silently begging for help.
Fans of the beloved 1990s children's show Sunny Friends Club claim a lost episode aired only once before vanishing. Known for its cheerful tone and colorful characters, this episode was different, darker, unsettling, and impossible to find. Rumors spread on forums. Viewers remembered an episode where the characters behaved strangely. The animation was off, the colors muted, and the music warped. Instead of the usual playful antics, the characters wandered aimlessly, mumbling incoherent phrases. The episode ended with the main character staring directly at the screen, their eyes unnaturally wide. A low, droning sound played as they whispered, "We're not safe. Neither are you." Then the screen cut to static. Network executives denied the episode existed, but scattered accounts persisted. Some claimed they felt ill after watching it, plagued by nightmares and paranoia. Others swore they saw symbols flash on the screen, as if hiding a secret message. One former network employee anonymously claimed the episode was a test for subliminal messaging in a government experiment. It was allegedly pulled after its first airing, but not before affecting those who saw it. To this day, no recordings have surfaced. Fans searching for it report strange occurrences, files corrupting, devices crashing, and brief flickers of the main character's face staring lifelessly. Was it a hoax, a cover-up, or something more sinister? All that remains is the whispered name, Sunny Friends Club.
Evan, an IT technician for a government contractor, stumbled upon a hidden folder labeled Project Arabos while fixing a server glitch. Inside were redacted documents, blurry photos, and one video file. It showed a figure strapped to a chair, screaming with a voice off camera asking, "Have you seen the eyes?" Suddenly, his computer froze, and a message flashed, "This file is not for you." The next day, his badge stopped working, and coworkers avoided him. That night, Evan received a call from a distorted voice. "Delete everything. They're watching." Evan wiped his computer, but it was too late. Black SUVs parked near his house, and strangers stared at him in public. His accounts were frozen. One night, he found his laptop on with the Project Arabos folder open. A new file titled Evan appeared. He clicked it. It was a live feed of his bedroom. Behind him, the closet door creaked open. The next morning, Evan was gone. His apartment was empty, and his digital footprint erased. Conspiracy theorists say Project Arabos is a secret psychological